Hello, dear friends. I suspect that digital currencies controlled by a central bank wouldn't be currencies per se, but rather a system of economic control, a last-ditch attempt by central banks to survive at a time when the global financial system may be on the verge of collapse. Opinion piece. Race for a digital currency. There is a rush to launch digital currencies. Battle for the soul of the financial system. They would be centrally controlled. Central banks create a digital race, likely not to use blockchain. They intend to create a financial control system. This could lead to tax confiscation. It would be enforced using a personal database. More than 80% of central banks seek digital currencies. Transition to digital currencies could lead to volatility. State could control much more citizens' spending. China announces the expulsion of a US missile destroyer. China wants to issue depreciated banknotes to boost consumption. Proposals involve the provision of universal bank accounts. Soros' prediction attracts more investors to China instead of driving them away. Cyberattack brings down system of New Zealand's largest bank. Ships carrying aid for IT have been attacked by gangs of thieves. Saudi Arabia backs full declassification of 9/11 documents. Afghans from UK, US among Taliban fighters. Treasury reiterates warning that government could run out of money. Radio signal emitted from the center of a Milky Way galaxy discovered. Russian Space Agency chief invites Elon Musk to talk about extraterrestrial life. Let's start. Central banks are rushing to launch national digital currencies in what has become a battle for the soul of the financial system. Nearly every central bank in the world is considering or even testing digital currencies issued by themselves in an attempt to maintain control of the money supply and interest rates and to preserve financial stability. However, these digital currencies could also cause major financial disruptions, according to investment strategists. The US Federal Reserve and the European Central Bank are studying the creation of national digital currencies. In April, the Bank of England announced the creation of a working group with the Treasury, which is expected to announce a UK digital currency pilot scheme very soon. The People's Bank of China has gone ahead and is already in the pilot phase. It has created a national cryptocurrency that works through a phone app. The aim is to replace cash, improve financial inclusion, and create more efficient payment systems across the country. The People's Bank of China is already suggesting the issuance of depreciated bills to incentivize spending. China already has a very sophisticated telephone payment network, and the population arguably has fewer privacy qualms. Bankers at the Chinese Monetary Authority are also studying other innovative financial instruments. Definition. The phrase central bank digital currency has been used to refer to various proposals involving digital currency issued by a central bank. A report from the Bank of International Settlements states that although the term is not well defined, in quotes, most envision it as a new form of central bank money that is different from balances in traditional reserve or settlement accounts. Central bank digital currencies are also called digital fiat currencies or digital-based currency. The current concept was directly inspired by Bitcoin, but the digital currency is different from virtual currency and cryptocurrency. which are not issued by a state and lack government-declared legal tender. Digital currency applications are not likely to use any kind of distributed ledger such as blockchain. Digital currencies remain mostly at the hypothetical stage, with some proof of concept programs. However, more than 80% of central banks are seeking digital currencies. China's digital renminbi was the first digital currency issued by a major economy. A central bank's digital currency would likely be implemented using a database managed by the central bank, government, or approved private sector entities. The database would keep track of the amount of money held by each entity, such as individuals and corporations. Unlike cryptocurrencies, a central bank's digital currency would be centrally controlled, so a blockchain or other distributed ledger would probably not be necessary or useful. Digital fiat currency is part of the basic money supply along with other forms of currency. As such, it is a central bank liability just like physical currency. It is a digital carrier instrument that can be stored, transferred and transmitted by all types of digital payment systems and services. Proposals for the implementation of a digital currency often involve the provision of universal bank accounts at central banks for all citizens. Risks. There are 3 risks associated with the central bank digital currencies. First, disintermediation of the banking system with the ability to provide digital currency directly to its citizens. This could precipitate potential bank runs and thus weaken the funding position of banks. Second, centralization. Since most central bank digital currencies are centralized rather than decentralized like most cryptocurrencies, the controllers of digital currency issuance can add or remove money from anyone's account with the flip of a switch. In contrast, this is prevented by cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin, unless a user group that controls more than 50% of the mining power agrees. Third, digital dollarization. A well-managed foreign digital currency could replace a local currency for the same reasons behind dollarization. Facebook's Libra announcement helped central bankers pay more attention to digital currencies as well as China's progress. Drawbacks. There is no doubt that this new world of digital currencies presents risks, some of them potentially alarming. Central banks issuing their own currencies could destabilize the entire banking sector. In time of crisis, people are likely to take money out of their bank account and deposit it in the central bank's account, which would accelerate bank runs. It risks turning banks into investment companies with less flexibility to lend to growing businesses. It could also undermine the direct access to credit currently enjoyed by households and businesses. Another disadvantage for holders of this currency would be the loss of anonymity. The state would be able to control citizens spending much more. This could lead to tax confiscation and greater state control of individuals' money. The most likely scenario in the short to medium term is that private cryptocurrencies will continue to expand, and there will be a kind of uneasy coexistence between them and digital currencies. It is possible that there will be regulation at the edge of cryptocurrencies, as seen in China. In the longer term, digital currencies could replace them, and private cryptocurrencies and even commercial banks could be displaced. The more destabilizing alternative is that digital currencies may not be attractive enough to stop the march of unregulated cryptocurrencies, as people quickly adopt new platforms and private currencies. Policymakers face losing control of the financial and payment system, and private stablecoins, which are supposed to compete at a fixed exchange rate with existing national currencies, could be imposed. The transition to digital currencies has the potential to generate volatility. To avoid unleashing a wave of destabilization, almost all central banks want to limit the attractiveness of their cryptocurrency and its availability, so they will most likely make the currency available through a commercial bank's account. Economy. Soros' prediction attracts more investors to China instead of driving them away. After Soros called investments in China a tragic mistake, in quotes, BlackRock has raised $1 billion amount from its first mutual fund with the Asian giant. The world's largest asset manager, BlackRock Inc., announced the raising of about $1 billion from the maiden fund that attracted more than 111,000 investors and closed the fundraising days ahead of the planned date, which was September 10th. Stocks fall. Wall Street plunged and European stocks suffered their worst drop in 3 weeks on Wednesday of uncertainty about the pace of the economic recovery as investors shift away from riskier assets and lift the dollar to weak highs. Wall Street ends lower, weighted down by big tech. The Wall Street closed lower Wednesday, spooked by worries that the crisis could slow the economy's recovery and uncertainty over when the Federal Reserve might withdraw its accommodative policies. The IBEX 35 is out of the European falls thanks to CaixaBank and Telefónica. The IBEX 35 ended Tuesday with a rise of 0.14% to 8,894.5 points, although on a technical level it continues to stagnate and has been trading sideways in recent sessions, once again hitting the 9,000 point mark at the beginning of September, so it continues to trade above the 8,800 point support. Gold remains below $1,800. Gold futures remain below the key mark on Wednesday, taking its losses to a second consecutive session. Oil prices recover. Oil prices rebounded early Wednesday, rising more than 1% as nearly 80% of total crude oil production in the Gulf of Mexico remains shut in more than a week after Hurricane Ida made landfall in Louisiana. Problems. Treasury reiterates warning that government could run out of money to pay debt in October. The US government could run out of money next month to pay its debt, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said Wednesday, reiterating her warning that emergency measures put in place to raise cash could soon run out. Cyberattack brings down system of New Zealand's biggest bank. A cyberattack on Wednesday brought down the system of New Zealand's biggest bank, ANZ, and other banks and companies such as the Postal Service. The sharp rise in house prices is forcing New Zealanders to look for mortgage partners through dating apps. New Zealand's growing housing crisis is causing young Kiwis to appeal to Tinder and other dating apps in search of a partner who can help them buy a property. The number of users looking for such a match had more than doubled, increasing 2.6 times year on year from June 2020 to June 2021, reports The Guardian. The financial system is under attack. In quotes, the bad news is that the global financial system is about to collapse, writes Catherine Austin Fitz, former Undersecretary of Housing, financial manager and editor of the Solari Report, who adds that for the last 20 to 30 years, central banks have been taking a significant amount of money out of sovereign governments. She calls it a financial coup and believes that the crisis is helping to provide the air cover for the fact that a lot of the promises that have been made are not going to be kept. And the final culmination of this will be, all of this is in quotes, when they introduce digital currencies controlled by a central bank, because they wouldn't be currencies but a financial control system. Close quotes. Hunger for US minorities and children increased. The number of Hispanics and black families without enough to eat rose in 2020, the US government said Wednesday, as the crisis closed businesses and left millions of laid-off citizens struggling to buy food. Cyber robbers charged with identity theft. A man and 2 women were arrested and charged with stealing the identities of 7 victims of the Southside condominium collapse near Miami Beach this summer and trying to obtain credit cards in their names, a Florida prosecutor said Wednesday. Chinese coal prices hit record highs. The price of coal futures overnight hit a record high and are nearly 80% higher than a year ago, signaling a desperate need for China to increase domestic production in the short term, despite the government's plan to reduce reliance on coal in the long term. Europe. Inflation may prompt ECB to tighten policy. The European Central Bank may tighten policy sooner than many expect, as inflationary pressures may prove persistent, ECB policymaker Robert Holtzmann said Wednesday. Eurozone banks face further increase in impaired loans. Eurozone banks will face further deterioration in their loan portfolios, and many lenders have not adjusted their credit control standards to recognize the unique nature of the crisis. Honeymoon between Paris and Rome. The recent meeting between Draghi and Macron in Marseille marked a new step towards consolidating the axis between the 2 Latin countries, which are strengthening their cooperation to face global challenges. Top suspect tells Paris attacks trial he's a soldier of Islamic State, in quotes. The prime suspect in a jihadist rampage that killed 130 people across Paris defiantly described himself as, in quotes, a soldier of Islamic State, and shouted at the top judge Wednesday at the start of a trial for the 2015 attacks. Afghanistan. EU will continue to provide Afghanistan with humanitarian but not economic aid. The European Union will continue to provide Afghanistan with humanitarian aid, but economic aid will be subordinated to the actions of the new Afghan government, European Commission Vice President Maros Sefcovic said. Italy is considering a joint consulate in Afghanistan under the umbrella of the European Union or the United Nations. Italy is considering the creation, together with its allies, of a joint presence in Afghanistan, which, with consular functions and under the umbrella of the European Union or the United Nations, would serve to establish an immediate point of contact in that country, said Foreign Minister Luigi Di Maio. Afghans from UK and US among Taliban fighters. Some Taliban fighters in numerous photos show signs of having received professional military training, possibly from the UK or US, or from people the militaries of these countries would have trained. The Times reported, citing unnamed British Army sources. Well wary of Taliban government. Foreign countries on Wednesday greeted the composition of the new government in Afghanistan with caution and dismay after the Taliban appointed veteran hardline figures to top posts, including several with a US bounty on their heads. Hundreds of Afghans take to the streets of Kabul calling for freedom. Hundreds of protesters took the streets of the capital Kabul chanting anti-Pakistan slogans and calling for freedom, a day after resistance leader Ahmad Massoud called for an uprising against the Taliban regime. The Taliban are cracking down on protests in Herat and Kabul after spokesman Zabiullah Mujahid announced that any illegal protests, in quotes, is banned. The Taliban have declared that they want diplomatic relations with all countries in the world except Israel. 8 groups warned of humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan. International aid agencies have raised the alarm about a looming humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan, with Doctors Without Borders saying the country's vulnerable health systems faces potential collapse. On Monday, the United Nations appealed for nearly $200 million in additional funding for vital aid in Afghanistan after last month's Taliban takeover led to an exodus of aid workers and funding cuts. The West owes Qatar a favor over Afghanistan. Since the US withdrawal from Afghanistan, the world's top diplomats have been making overtures to Qatar, long the gateway to the Taliban and now the essential intermediary as the West tries to deal with the new government in Kabul. Middle East. Suspected jihadists who wanted to attack tourist sites arrested in Morocco. A suspected jihadist who wanted to attack Moroccan tourist sites and was reported to have designed explosives was arrested in Tangier. Spanish police who collaborated in the case announced Tuesday. Egypt accused of extrajudicial executions and called for sanctions. Human Rights Watch on Tuesday accused Egypt of carrying out dozens of extrajudicial executions, in quotes, of alleged terrorists, in quotes, and called for sanctions on the international community as well as suspending its arms sales to Cairo. Saudi Arabia backs full declassification of 9/11 documents. The Saudi embassy in the US has stated that Saudi Arabia fully supports the declassification of documents related to investigations into the 9/11 attack in the hope of clearing up baseless allegations, in quotes, about the kingdom's complicity in the attacks. The Political Architecture of a New Middle East by Thierry Mason. The post-Syrian war Middle East is taking shape. Everything would change. Syria would join the Russian-led military coalition and would be protected by it. Lebanon would come under the joint tutelage of Russia and the US, but France would occupy it militarily. Iraq would replace Lebanon as regional mediator, and Iran would be admitted to the Mediterranean. China and Russia. China announces expulsions of US-guided missile destroyer that passed through South China Sea without authorization. The Chinese army expelled the US-guided missile destroyer USS Benfold after the ship passed near Mischief Reef in the Spratly Islands in the South China Sea on Wednesday without obtaining Beijing's approval. Russian emergencies minister dies while trying to save worker during exercise. Russia's emergency situations minister Evgeny Zinichev died Wednesday while trying to save the life of a member of the emergency services during a series of training exercises in the Arctic. Russian Space Agency chief invites Elon Musk to discuss extraterrestrial life over a cup of tea in Moscow. The head of Russia's Space Command has offered to sit down with billionaire tycoon Elon Musk, founder of the US rocket company SpaceX, to discuss efforts to explore the universe and whether there is life on other planets. Spain and America. Hunger quiz are growing by the day. The crisis has left many Spaniards without work and without income. As a result, the hunger quiz have been growing month by month, and the summer has been no exception. Hundreds of people queue up every day to collect food and be able to eat. There they are provided with basic products for themselves and also for their children. Earthquake in Acapulco. A strong earthquake of magnitude 7.1 shakes central and south Mexico. An earthquake has taken place this Tuesday near Acapulco de Juarez in the Mexican state of Guerrero. The telluric movement occurred 11 kilometers southwest of the city, which has more than 650,000 inhabitants. The tremor was so strong that it even shook buildings in Mexico City, which is about 380 kilometers from the epicenter. It knocked out power to more than 1.5 million people across the country and caused numerous landslides. Ships carrying aid for Haiti have been attacked by gangs of thieves. The attacks are said to have prevented the arrival and unloading of supplies sent to the Caribbean nation, which is experiencing an intense economic, social, and political crisis. The attack of armed gangs in Haiti hinders the arrival of the ships that Mexico sent to that country with humanitarian aid. Mexican cartels are trying to settle in Chile. Well-known Mexican drug cartels are trying to settle in Chile and start local production of illicit substances in the country, according to a report by the Attorney General's Office released on Wednesday. The British Museum will explore 3,000 years of Peruvian history from the ancient Chavin culture to the present, passing through the Incas, Nazcan, or Chimu, in an unprecedented exhibition for which 40 exceptional pieces will be added to its already impressive collection. Curious. Harmful language in the Constitution. In quote, harmful language alert or labels can be found on pages displaying scant versions of the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitutions, as well as the first 10 amendments, known as the Bill of Rights. Soap made from donkey milk creates a furor in Jordan. When soap made from donkey milk first began to be sold in Jordan, the product was often mocked, but a year later, Salma al-Thawbi's family business is a huge success. The world's most powerful magnet is on its way to the ITER reactor in France, weighing 1,000 tons and with the dimensions of a 7-story building. The first piece of a gigantic magnet, described as the world's most powerful, will arrive Thursday at the site of the ITER experimental nuclear fusion reactor in southern France. A radio signal emitted from the center of the Milky Way discovered. An international group of researchers has discovered that the radio signal is emitted from the center of a galaxy with some regularity. However, so far it is not known what kind of cosmic object originates it. The astronomers explain that it is a highly polarized, highly variable, steep spectrum radio source. It is variable because the electromagnetic waves it emits do not follow a specific time pattern, and it is highly polarized because the orientation of the wave oscillation is skewed both linearly and secularly. And that's all for today. Thanks a lot, dear friends.